Wow, that was quick.
You have the magic touch.
I guess so. Well, this presentation is going to be on the config.sys file. And I was really happy when I saw this as one of the, I was shown a list of possible presentations, and I kind of jumped on this one because I thought it was great. Finally, I'm going to get all of you guys to help me figure out what all this stuff is in the config.sys. So anyway, I took my config.sys to my computer, and I ran it through my config.sys sorter. This is the same tool that I use when I look at your config.sys when I'm looking at tickets and things. When you send me the test log file, it has the config.sys in there, and run it through my program, and it sorts it, removes all the comments, and shows it to me the way the OS2 uses it, the way the kernel looks at it. The first thing that the kernel loads is the PSD. And of course, there is only one of these, and we only have one PSD, which is the ACPI-based PSD. And anybody not know what this does?
Everything? No, I don't know what it does.
It's a kind of a companion to the kernel. It's kind of a kernel plugin, and the kernel uses it to configure the system and set things up. So that's what your PSD stands for. Anybody know? Platform specific driver, yes. And basically the platform is the IBM PC in our case. So it basically sets up the computer and enables your processors and gets things ready to run. The next section of your config.sys that the kernel loads and runs is all the base devs, the base drivers. These are all the drivers that are considered essential for the system to run and kind of gets everything working. This is all of the base devs that I use on my computer. Starts with the device-dependent keyboard driver and your high-resolution timer, the check disk helper driver, all of your USB drivers, the CAD-H, which is your Control-Alt-Delete helper. Your disk drivers, we got AHCI and the Vanny driver for the AHCI and the IDE type drives. Some more USB stuff, your direct access storage device drivers, your LVM driver, ASCII drivers. Anybody want to know what any of these things are?
Just out of curiosity, I guess, the
Yeah, please.
D1S 506 there. I think some woman from Germany wrote these things for years ago.
Well, it's
I met her once at one of the gatherings.
Basically, the old IBM S506 driver that is improved. Okay, so it runs your older IDE type drives. And there's some SATA drives that will connect to the old S506 hardware, but typically most of our drives, modern drives, are AHCI drives. So that's the hardware a lot of people have now. But we still need both of them. Sometimes a lot of systems, or especially older systems, your CD drive will be run by the Dandy driver, the S506 driver.
Does it load them in the order shown?
Well, that's a very good question. The base dev drivers are loaded in a specific order based on the file extension. And this happens to be sorted in the order that the kernel loads them. The sys drivers are loaded first, followed by the ADD drivers, and then followed by the DMDs. The ADD is an adapter device driver, so that's why the AHCI and the S506 and the MSD, the USB MSD, those are adapter device drivers. And then the DMDs are device manager drivers. They're basically manage the devices that are driven by the ADDs. We have a quiz, like what does DASD stand for? I already told you, but.
On the AHCI driver, what's the /F?
Those are some switches.
Which is the, I know which one the N is, I know which one the F is.
I don't remember.
It's force, and I don't know what it force is.
Usually
not
force,
force.
but not on that.
Go back and read the manual, right?
Read the README. It's in the README. There's quite a few switches, and honestly, I don't remember
We
what
have to
those
read
are.
the README?
Half the switches on these things I don't remember because there's just so many of them that, anyway. Any other questions on any of these? Anybody not know what these are or would like to know more about them?
You changed the order of the USB between the 16-bit and the 32-bit.
Yes, the USB drivers used to initialize themselves at what we call init complete time. When the kernel loads all the base dev drivers, then the kernel loads all the device statements, then the kernel goes and sends a message to every driver in backwards order saying, everything's loaded, okay, initialize yourselves. And the old USB drivers used to do it at that time, at the end. The new 32-bit drivers initialize themselves when they load, which is the reason for the reverse order, because they're loaded in this order and they will initialize themselves in this order. So all of the drivers that control hardware, which is XHCD, EHCD, UHCD, they all communicate with the USB-D driver. The USB-D driver is kind of like the traffic cop for all of the USB drivers. So it should be first so that when the HC, the host controller drivers load, they can connect to USB because it's already there. If USB-D wasn't there, they would say, I can't connect to the USB-D driver.
X is the 3.0.
X is the USB 3 driver.
ES2.
This is the USB 2 driver. And the U and the O are the USB 1 drivers. The HID is human interface driver. It talks to USB-D as well.
Keyboards.
The USB MSD driver talks to USB-D. So USB-D really is like a traffic cop. Everything connects to it. Okay? So this is your base devs. This is the critical drivers of the system. Then we have a whole bunch of other stuff in the device driver section. And it's kind of a mixture of IFS, which is installable file systems, and device drivers. You kind of need to have the Unicode driver first because other things depend on it, like JFS depends on Unicode, so it's got to be first. The device drivers load in the order presented, which is why ordering is very important here. I like to put all my IFS drivers near the top pretty much early because when the kernel loads an installable file system driver, it has a lot of memory issues involved. I'll just put it that way. There's memory allocation issues when installing IFS, and you don't want things interfering with those memory allocations like other device drivers. This is the primary reason why, I don't know, a lot of people keep hearing it, I keep saying, you got to make sure all of your Mac drivers load after all of the IFS drivers. Because there are some Mac drivers that open files and keep them open. And when you have an open file, you've got memory structures in memory pointing to the IFS. And then if you load an IFS later, the kernel might deallocate some of that stuff just to move it to a bigger table. And you'll get tracks if that happens. That's why you want your IFSs up early in your config.sys. So anyway, I have quite a few. You got your HPFS driver, JFS, FAT32, some of your CD stuff. I run NetDrive, that's the NetDrive file system. I also run RSJ, this is the RSJ CD writer file system. Then you got, this is networking stuff. You can tell it's really clear, IBM COM, that's networking stuff. This is another CD-ROM device manager driver. ASCII route, this is for your AT-API type CDs and stuff, DVDs, CDs. Any of your stuff that starts with a V is like a virtual driver for DOS emulation. And you can kind of tell because it's in the MDOS directory. The test config driver, This is used usually for at installation time, for testing various parts of the system when you want to install things. Kind of.
Is it used
Well,
after install sometimes?
Yes, it can be used after install. Like for example, if you were to run selective install.
Oh,
Also, I think AMPM uses this as well. Any questions on any of those? There's more.
I have a question.
Sorry, just
Question.
before we go off that,
What's that?
if you haven't loaded the IFSs yet, how's
Yeah.
it reading this file?
Oh,
Because it's reading the
mini
config.sys file from the
IFS.
disk on the file system.
Yeah, right.
this is actually a really good question because a lot of people don't realize how this stuff works. Yes, the question was, if you haven't loaded, like suppose you're booting off an HPFS disk, how does it find the base disk? Because you haven't even loaded HPFS IFS yet. Well, when the system boots up, one of the early things that loads is the OS2 boot file in the root of the directory, and that contains a little mini IFS, which has limited functions, but it's capable of reading the disk and capable of reading the drivers off the disk, and that's how it gets all this stuff. Then once the IFS is loaded, then you've got full file system access with full read-write caching and all that.
And was that enhanced every time a new file system is introduced? How does that work?
If you need a different OS2 boot for the specific file system you're booting from. So when you create your bootable disk, the proper OS2 boot for that file system is put there. So if you're booting off a JFS, you'll have a JFS specific boot.
Oh, I see.
And if you're booting off of HPFS, you'll have the HPFS boot. If you're booting off of FAT, you'll have a FAT. So
And how is it loaded? By BIOS or something? Or
It's-
what?
it's
That-
loaded.
It's just
that
like
thing
any boot
itself.
file.
Well,
It's
it's
at a certain,
loaded.
it's at a certain section where you know at the start of the partition. So it doesn't have to know the
No,
file
when you
system.
when the system boots up, the BIOS loads the track 0 stuff off the disk, and then that goes and finds the OS2 file, OS2 boot file, and it's kind of a sequenced bootstrap.
Right.
That's where every OS boots
It's
usually.
the way every OS boots
Yeah.
up.
The track 0 is called micro FSD.
Yeah, there's actually two ISDs. It's got a super tiny one in track 0, and then that loads OS2 boot, which has one that has a little bit more functionality, and that's what lets you load your config.sys and everything else. And then, then the IFSs take over and you're up and running. Once again, we've got more DOS stuff. This thing here is what lets your DOS simulations, your virtual DOS sessions run. Plus, believe it or not, most programs that reboot the system, including CAT-H and stuff, use this driver to cause the reboot to happen. What's PMDD? Anybody know what PMDD is?
Tech mode.
Yes.
Draw.
PM protect mode what?
Basically,
Draw
just
device.
provide services for PM, low-level, hardware-level services.
Correct. Yep. Low-level hardware services, mostly for mouse, keyboards, that sort of stuff. You got your other, all these are DOS things, DOS emulation stuff, all your memory management stuff, your 16-bit API, your 32-bit API. This allows you to have mouse working in DOS and, of course, Windows 2 sessions. You got point DD. This is kind of an important driver. Anybody know why? Anybody know what it does?
It draws the point.
It does, exactly. It draws the mouse pointer. Very good. Some more USB stuff. This is your USB mouse driver and your USB keyboard driver. It takes the USB codes from the USBs and then routes them into the regular keyboard and mouse drivers. Networking stuff. But all of this is MPTN, all of your networking. These are IP, TCP IP network stuff, mostly. I can tell you a little bit more about what they do, but not much. This, of course, is your gives you TCP/IP access into DOS. These are these are. My brain is going blank here. NetBIOS. There we go. Yeah, NetBIOS stuff. I run NetBIOS in my systems. So that's what this is, and this is these are all NetBIOS things. This is an IFS, and it's down here because it has to.
It's strange why it's 0.2000
I'm sorry?
200. It's strange why it's 0.200 and not IFS.
If it was IFS, it would load it in the other spot, wouldn't
Yeah,
it?
but,
It is an
Because it
IFS.
loads by the extension.
yeah,
Well, it is an
that
IFS.
is what the extension is.
Yeah, but the extension is .200, he's saying.
The others, well, extension is just whatever
Right.
it is, and you can name it whatever. You can name you don't have to be .ifs.
Right.
The way they're loaded is based on this thing. But
Oh,
I don't
okay,
know.
okay, okay.
Ask IBM why they
It's
call
a
it that.
mystery.
Yeah.
I believe that this is because it's version 2.
Yeah, I just think it's, I always thought it was like 200 try.
Let's try.
But the only things that have to have is the service DLLs. Okay.
DLLs, well, and the base steps, because they're loaded based on extension.
Okay. All
Okay,
the products are different by different groups at IBM, yeah, so.
that's true. IBM has a lot of different departments, and the LAN people wanted to name it .200. Personally, I always thought that was based on the version.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
one that is
probably.
refers to.
Probably is. We
I just
got,
like my answer better.
yeah. This provides VGA support for DOS sessions. Grad.sys, this is an important driver. It's used by all of the grad drivers. Anybody know what a grad driver is? Graphics adapters, yeah. Whether it's Snap, whether it's Panorama, whether it's just a plain grad, they all use this.
And what does it do?
It provides memory management services mostly. And it also helps with writing the MTRRs, memory type range registers. Yeah, so it does a lot. It actually is pretty important. It does a lot of stuff. And of course, more DOS compatibility things, more networking stuff.
If you don't use DOS, is it okay to just get rid of them? all?
Yes, absolutely.
Except the one that allows reboot.
Yes.
And even that, you can look it out, you just have to reboot different ways.
Yeah, you'd have to reboot different ways. There are things that use the DOS virtual machine that you wouldn't think does. Panorama, for example, uses DOS sessions, DOS virtual DOS things to talk to the video BIOS.
So that'd be a reason to keep it.
You can get rid of a lot of it, but you can't get rid of the things that actually create the.
Yeah, you always have the ability to create videos, but they're not settings. In other words, you're not
Right,
gonna-
right. You would
like
lose your
that
DOS session
window.
support, but you would still have, I don't know, if you look in if you do get a process listing, there'll always be something that says VDM. That's your little DOS virtual machine that is used by things like Panorama. Anybody know what this last thing is?
Firewall. Oh, sure.
Firewall. Yeah, that's your firewall driver. And there's more. These things are pretty obvious what they are, right? These are sound stuff. There's a lot of weird name things. These, of course, are the UniOdd drivers. This is a MIDI driver, but since UniOdd doesn't have MIDI support, it doesn't much do anything. These are Ring 0 support for stream managers and sound stuff, packet drivers and things. Because a lot of the MMOS2 sound stuff is done by applications in Ring 3, so there's Ring 0 support with stuff there. Anybody not know what I just said? Like difference between Ring 0, Ring 3?
And Ring 2.
Well, we do have Ring 2 in OS2, but that's mainly video stuff. And here's my Mac driver, last one on the end. USB RS, I don't know why this was named this, but this is your DOS calls driver. The DOS calls, not DOS calls, I'm sorry, USB calls. For Ring, it's good, resource manager, but the only thing it ever does
response
is
manager?
there's the USB calls DLL, and this driver, this is the Ring 0 portion of it, and the DOS call, USB calls DLL is the Ring 3 portion, and they talk to each other to let you do USB stuff easily through an app.
Would it be like USB response manager or something? It
Yeah.
handles the responses back and forth.
Yeah, anything, or the removable media widget in the X Center. It talks to through USB calls to this. Okay. So that's pretty much all of your drivers. Any questions so far?
The USB, backing up a little bit,
Back.
external USB drive. I got a bushel of them, I guess, and I use them for a lot of backup. Not too keen on the cloud yet. It will read write to USB drives now with the new drivers.
Is there mass
USB.
storage support?
I'm sorry?
External USB drives.
Yes, I use them
Yeah.
all the time.
Okay.
I back up to it. That's how I do my backups.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question on the sound thing there, you just said there was a MIDI sys driver,
There is a MIDI sys.
but Martine said that we didn't have MIDI.
We don't. Well,
We have half of one of those things.
MIDI support is built into MMOS2, but it requires support in the driver, the sound driver. And Uniod never implemented MIDI support. However, there are other sound drivers.
I was gonna say, if you had like a Sound Blaster 16 or something, wouldn't it work
If you have a
fine?
Sound Blaster,
That's
the
what I
Sound
thought.
Blaster driver does.
I was pretty sure I've played MIDI before with Sound
Support-
Blasters.
support-
I got plenty
yes,
of Sound
yes.
Blasters.
But isn't it true that if you don't have the hardware, there's no reason to lower these things?
You know, I was wondering about that,
I mean,
and I was
mine
going to
has
look
been-
into it, and I didn't have time. I don't know what happens if you remove this. Something
Oh,
might
mine's
depend
been
on.
commented out for 10 years.
If you can
Oh,
comment
yeah.
it out. Okay, well there you go. Save some
I
memory.
commented out tons of stuff.
Save
A
some
lot
memory.
of, a lot of the OS2 Ring 3 applications are smart enough to see if that DLL is actually, or driver is actually available before I turn them right to it.
Yeah,
Sometimes they tell you, sometimes they
it
don't.
gets installed by default, which is kind of why it's there. So, all right, moving on. The run call section. This is a bunch of applications that just get run in sequence as they are presented.
Worth noting, after all the device drivers.
Yes, after all the device.
Yeah.
Oh yes, yes. After all of the base steps are loaded, after all of the device drivers are loaded, that's the time period where the kernel calls init complete, and that's when all the device drivers initialize themselves and kind of make sure everything's running. And at that point, you basically have a fully running system. Then you can consider this section as a bunch of applications that just get run at the end. And they get run in order, and
Are the runs are asynchronous and the calls
yes,
are
that is
synchronous?
exactly what the difference is. The run is just run it and move on. The call is run it and wait for it to finish. Anybody know what this one does?
It's your volume manager.
Logical volume
I
manager.
think it's part of the communication between JFS and LVM to manage bad sectors.
No, not that
If
I.
I don't have any comments in my notes on what this one does.
Don't quote me on this, but I think it's the one that handles when you actually, when you take type 35s and merge.
And you I thought you resize them. Yeah, when you resize them or you add,
No, that's,
Yeah, if you, if it's resized or if you've added a new,
nope.
part.
And I actually took that out of mine. That is a drive, the one called Extend FS study.
Oh, really? That's the one that handles it?
And since I never do that, I don't run mine, so that's why it's not there. I don't know what this does,
No, I've got it written down.
but I can tell you it has something to do with LVM.
That's another one I commented on. I have at least half of those commented on.
Does it
I
give
have
you
it-
smart
I come
status
I don't load-
alerts?
I don't load pretty much anything I don't need. This,
You
kinda need that.
you kind of need that.
Very
That's what
much.
basically starts up your networking, connects everything together. It's what processes the protocol manager, the protocol.ini file. This is
Messages.
LAN messages, yep.
Yep.
This, what does this do? That's kind of an interesting little thing.
It's your TCP staff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Odd name, but that's what
Yeah.
it is.
And it's interesting that they would
Controller.
do it like that, but that's what it is. Of course, the V thing again, that's to provide DOS support. These things are for my LAN, my NetBIOS stuff. I wrote this.
Oh, yeah.
I wrote that.
Which one?
MMFix.
Does it fix the MIDI problem? No, I'm just kidding.
No, it fixes the repeating desktop sounds problem.
Oh, okay, cool.
And it doesn't actually stay loaded. It just loads, stays around for 60 seconds, and then dies.
Oh, patches whatever the problem is and goes
Well,
away.
actually, what it does is it keeps DLLs in memory long enough
Oh,
for them
okay.
to be properly initialized. And that was the problem. DLL was getting loaded and exited, while other things still needed it, and that was
Okay.
what created the looping problem. So all it does is load the DLLs and keep them loaded for 60 seconds.
Would that happen if you have a slower, older computer? Did that start happening because computers got faster that you're running it on? I didn't know if that would have anything to do with it.
It's more complicated than that.
Okay.
It's more complicated. Yes and no.
Okay.
It's more complicated than that. Here's my CD writer file system support. I don't know why I got this in there, but maybe because it's just there. This is a VCPI daemon. It does power management support. It's what turns your CPUs on and off when you're not using them.
What about, do you know what query MMCD does?
It provides CD support. Other than that, I don't know. No?
You know what it does? Every time you boot up, it sees if you have a new CD-ROM installed and updates MMOS2 .ini. So if you never go installing and removing CD-ROM drives, you have no
You don't need that either.
You have no need for query MMCD.
Huh.
And if you do happen to install something or wipe out your MMOS2 or just replace it, you just run it once and it will reinstall the CD, and that's all you need.
Cool.
There's no reason to install a CD every time.
No reason to run it all the time then. Very good. See, we're getting good information here. I told you guys it'd help me figure out what all this stuff is. Okay. And then I figured I would go over just a few of the important control statements.
You
need to back up one. The last one, what does that last one do?
Oh yeah, what's this last one do here?
That's it.
That's your desktop.
What does this thing do?
It's a POS.
It's an application. It's an application with a funny name.
It's a funny name, yeah. What does that thing do?
It makes sure that your system, your PM will be able to run. It's a
OS2 INI
Yes.
maintainer.
Anything.
Maintainer.
Any file.
OS2 INI maintainer.
basically
INI
it's
fixer.
designed to avoid
IFX.
support calls. No, really, it's there. I wrote it for ANSYS, and then of course we brought it over to Arc and 08. But basically, it's there for the vendor's benefit by, first of all, making sure that the INI file is there,
Makes a
that
backup
it's
of it.
useful, that's usable, and then as a sort of afterthought, it goes through and cleans up unnecessary file handles. But as I pitched it to Mensis and as I pitched it to Akinoe, it's there for the vendor's benefit so that you guys don't keep filing tickets on my system will boot. You know, I just, I mean, you never see that, you know, OS2 is unable to load the thing about the bloody
Cannot find your
workplace.
desktop in OS2.
And you end up with the box. I don't think, hopefully nobody's seen that in several years.
No.
So that's what that is.
I thought it was just there to interrupt my boot so that when I would think the machine was going to boot up by the time I got back with my coffee, it was sitting there at a prompt asking me which one did I want to restore.
A
That's right, it
few
doesn't
of the
take a
control
lot of
statements.
effort to fix things. If it looks too broken, it says you used to have a good one, let's use ours.
I just put a few of the control statements in here. There are lots and lots of them. These are some of the ones that I think are kind of important. That I have auto fail. Anybody know what that does? Disables pop-up messages for hardware errors.
Autofill sounded like a Windows feature.
Yeah, well, yes, exactly. Isn't that the this prevents the retry, fail, abort message?
Yeah.
DLL basing, on or off, most people would never notice a difference. By turning it off, you can maybe free up a little bit of the private memory. Early memory's pretty important. It allows access to memory above 16 megabytes early on for drivers.
Something I noticed long ago was that with early Mennonite, there's no need, I don't find any need to have check distances.
That very, very likely is true.
And like, it hardly matters with JFS, but with HBFS,
Right.
I could, I have no, it ran pretty quickly as long as early Mennonite is true.
Right. This statement allows Ring 3 applications to access hardware I/O ports directly. Now, I don't know why we turn it on by default. This is the default. On is default. I don't know why. Why do we do that? Really? I don't know.
You need it for DOS sessions.
You do need that on for DOS sessions?
For certain, for the ones that actually, think of the DOS programs that actually need hardware access. It's only a subset of them, not all of them.
Okay. Which goes along with this next one. Because if you put this to yes, none of your DOS stuff will work.
No more DOS sessions.
No more
VDMs
DOS
work,
sessions.
but no DOS sessions.
What's that?
VDMs work.
The
but no
VDMs
DOS
will work, but
sessions.
no sessions will work, right. Did somebody have a question?
No.
Okay.
Do you save much by not running DOS support, like memory resources?
I would imagine yes.
Yeah, a lot.
A lot, yeah.
I think the scheduler's happening too, that's what I've heard.
I don't know. I load DOS all the time, even on the server. I found the server runs better with DOS load.
It's like politics, I never do it, you vote.
Yeah.
It's
This
one of those things. I know it's a lot of resource usage.
lets you set the drive letter of your CD drive, basically.
Is there any negative aspects to changing R to something else? No? Okay.
You'll find that your CD drive will move to the letter right after this.
That's that one, eh? Okay.
I never figured out why we did 1 after.
No, that's not related. What?
Reserves them too.
Yeah, I never figured out why we did it backwards. It's really saying this is the last one.
That's really
and
what it
gives you the
says. It
next
says,
one.
this is the last drive letter used for regular drives, and the one after this is where you start your removable drives.
What if you set to Z, what happens?
You're maybe in trouble.
I don't know. I've never tried it.
Maybe it'll go to numbers.
If
That's some
when
area.
your CD is drive C.
Yeah, I don't know.
Your CD
Suppress
drive would
pop-ups.
become the
Who knows
floppy
what
drive.
that does?
You don't get those trap pop-ups?
Those full screen uglies.
It writes that to the
It
pop-up
writes a
log.
file also.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now pop-ups get rid of the pop-up log file,
Much more useful.
to the log file. And where is that pop-up log file written?
Drive
A
D.
disk.
Drive D. Yes. That's the drive letter that writes the pop-up log.os2 file too.
Not E.
Well, if you make that an E, it would write it to E.
That was a door.
Where's that?
And this, I have this on my system, so this is, sets up trap dumps. If you, I have a trap dump partition as my O drive. This says ring 0 traps. So if I ever get a ring 0 trap, it will write the trap dump to drive O. This is optional, of course, but I have it because, well,
Because you cause those.
I cause those frequently.
But you can select which ring, R1,
Yes, you can.
R2,
Yes,
or
yes.
R3. Okay.
And I think that's all I've got.
Is R0, is there also like an R2 and R, there is, so they're separate?
No, what happens, you don't put the R0, you get it for every track.
Right.
Not as much fun.
Yeah. I'm only interested in the ring 0 ones, really.
I've never found use for the other ones.
I haven't either.
So how's USB?
Well, that's tomorrow.
Okay. Sorry. Can I ask one question though?
You may.
If I have like an Arc OS 5.04, is there a way I can introduce this USB 3 driver to try to install
Of course.
on a machine that doesn't have two?
Of
Like our-
course.
Yeah?
Yes. To take 5.0.4 and install that on a
Or
system?
modify the image, you know what I mean? I'd set it up so that you can boot off the USB 3.
That would be really challenging.
Oh.
Isn't that something, we just put that in for the data?
It's in our
Yeah,
data.
it's not in any of the GAs.
Well, no, there's too much. It can be done. It requires a lot of manual manipulation.
I see.
It requires setting up stuff in the pre-boot menu, editing the config.sys in the pre-boot menu, and yes, it can be done.
But you can't do it.
But I
Which I used to do, but yeah.
If you had access to a beta, it's easier.
If you have access to a beta, the new betas have already been modified to do that.
But eventually, when you're comfortable with it, it will become part of it.
And we'll talk about that tomorrow.
I have an easy question. for
Oh,
you.
good, an easy one.
Back in the days of Work 3, there was a series of config statements, libpath, path, dpath, help, and glossary.
Yes.
Some of them had to have a trailing semicolon and some didn't. Is that still applicable?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't have any idea. I always use trailing semicolons, so. Anybody know the answer? Do they still require that?
I'm not aware.
Then they can fix this.
I know like, a lot of people can fix sys server, Doug writes, he has an option, make sure it puts
These days,
because
I haven't
there's
noticed.
potential.
I figure there's always potential, so there's always potential for problems, so I always use the trailing semicolon on every directory path.
And there's nothing wrong with multiple semicolons, they're just the additional ones.
That would be just an empty path. Yeah, okay, very good. I think I even ended on time. Close.